Hi,
Welcome. Hi. This is Powerssquared Raw and Real number 17. I'm MA Powers,
and I'm JL Powers,
and I'm coming to you from sunny Maine for a change.
and I'm coming to you from windy California for a change.
Well, so today I was gonna talk to you a little bit about publishing, and I was curious as to how you, as a writer, got into publishing. I know you've been doing, because I know what you're up to, what you've been doing for a while. But let anybody else out there know about what publishing company you are involved in, actually you started and that you own, and how you got there from being a writer.
Okay. I started, I launched, okay. I launched Catalyst Press. We had a little cameo appearance there from my child. So I started Catalyst Press this last year. Books number 5 and 6 are coming out this summer. And, you know, I don't know why I decided to get into publishing. It's sort of a crazy thing to do. But I mean, I think I fundamentally feel like books save the world. Maybe that's a stupid thing. I was actually in the airport, the Dallas airport, ready to fly home from Texas Library Association last week. And I went into this wine bar and I asked the gentleman that was sitting one seat over if he minded if I put my bag in the seat between us so that I could get a book out. And he said, "Oh, do books still exist?" And I think he was trying to be funny, but I'll tell you what, all I wanted to say was, "Well, F you." And I said, yes, they're very much still a thing, and they're very much still alive. And then I turned to the woman next to me because she started noticing the cover of the book, and my child is awake. I don't know if you could hear that, but anyway, she noticed the cover of the book and she was like, "Oh, I haven't seen that one. I haven't heard of that one." And I was like, "Well, no, because it's only come out in South Africa by a South African publisher. It's not available in the U.S. However, I'm a publisher and I'm considering bringing this out in the United States maybe in a year or two." And so then we got to talking, and she loved books, so it was like this total opposite of him. Right. But sometimes I do wonder, I mean, I know there's so many people that don't read books now, but then there's so many people that do, and the publishing industry is still thriving. And I don't think it matters whether you like books or not. The reality is that I think books are more important than almost any other tool we have for transformation of society. And hey, Nesta, you're really distracting me. Can you take your thing and go somewhere else?
No, thank you.
Oh, okay. He's getting yogurt out of the freezer and other things. So anyway, okay. He's getting a bowl of Cheez-Its too. But I look back on my life, and as a child, the fears that I had, and books were the thing that took me out of myself and my intense fears of, like, Satan, right? Actually, and books were definitely what saved me from the fear that I had, and so to me personally, they saved me. And then I do feel like they have the ability to save other people, to change society. And so that's why I decided to start publishing books as well as writing them, because you can write only so fast, but you can publish other people's works a whole lot faster, assuming that you have the money to put into it.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it makes sense. I think I think people, we do this as a society, and I don't know how easy it is, but we have a tendency to think of what is the practical purpose of X, right? Instead of just saying we're going to do X. So we'll take art, for example, right? In our society today, it's not good enough just to do art for art's sake, right? We do art because it helps our children learn math, or it helps our children not be so wiggly in reading, or you know what I'm saying? Like we're getting to a point where we have to justify everything that we do, and we don't just do math because we like math, right? We do math because we need to be better engineers, and if we're better engineers, we're going to be better as a society at making things, and then we'll have a higher GDP, right? So and the more and I don't have a problem with economics. I mean, in a sense, economics is really we say one thing and it doesn't mean anything until there's money on the line. When money is put down, then we know something is meaningful. So there's that idea. But I think books have almost gotten to the point, and art and many things in our society, where we look at them and say, well, we're doing this for some ulterior motive, right?
Or some ulterior motive, or some like
not ulterior,
altruistic motive.
Yeah, there's some motive, right? That we're making instead of this is great, this is art, right? It's
all right. So you got me.
Right. No, and I don't mind it. I'm just giving you another, I'm just giving you a different point of view here, because when it comes to me and what I'm considering publishing, it's society might look at it as an elevated, higher level. But on the other hand, it's not in my own head, and I'll tell you why that is. But do we really need a reason to publish something? Obviously, we do to a certain extent, because you got to pay the bills, right? You can't.
Well, yeah, for me, in the end, I suppose, I'm offering this altruistic reason, and I do believe it, but also I just really, really love books, and so I want to publish books, and write them,
and that can be, I think, like as a celebrating just the average person and celebrating just life in general. Sometimes we give these elevated motives to things, and yours is, I know you. The motive you have for books is real. It's who you are. It's where you are. But we don't need to have those motives necessarily all the time for everything. That's just my point, because sometimes you just do something because you like it. No other reason, just because it's there to do and you like to do it, so I'm going to do it. And I think that that's motivation enough. And I think if we can get to that purity as people, know ourselves enough, know who we are internally enough to do what we do because we want to do it, not necessarily because we have to justify it to society, then we'll be much happier as individuals. Because the reason I come to this is because as a scientist, it wasn't good enough just to explore science, okay? You didn't get funded because you were going to do science. You got funded because your science might cure cancer. Does that make sense? Like a lot of times you had to couch it that way, or it might cure some other random disease or some disease. But NIH, the National Institutes of Health, which has the huge budget for science, wasn't going to give you money just to do science, because they have a mandate to try and work at science for disease, which is often narrow-sighted, and you might miss basic research that will help you in ways that you can't imagine, because but on the other hand, I mean, sometimes you need to have focus. You can't just throw money at everything, right? So I'm not criticizing it necessarily, but I do wonder in our personal lives if we get to the point where we personally have to justify everything that we do to everybody around us because we're too unsure of what we like.
No, I didn't actually feel criticized, by the way, but I was like, all right, that's the reason I give to everyone.
Right.
And it's true. It's a true reason. And I look back on my whole life and I can see how books were a strong, supportive backbone my entire life in meaningful ways that helped me through the toughest times of my life. And so as a result, that is what created things, but it's what produced my love for books and my passion for books and my belief that they have the capacity to change people, to help people, to support people, and so all of that is true, but in the end, I think it does boil down to the fact that I love books. I want to be around books. I, whether it makes money or not, I'm going to keep writing those freaking books, and I'm going to keep publishing those freaking books. Just hopefully it breaks even and makes some money too, and all of those things. But but for you, you've decided, okay, you want to start publishing books, and we're going to create a little imprint of my publishing company. And for you, it sounds like there's not necessarily this huge altruistic motive, or
there is to some extent, but in other ways not so much. I think and we're gonna actually finish this in the 15 minutes. So if you're watching this and wondering when we're going to be done, we're going to be done in like 4 minutes.
4 minutes.
Make this fast, in a way. I think, what I'm considering publishing is story merged with science. And it's supposed, my tagline is merging story with science for the betterment of humanity. But really, it's also the betterment of science, because I come from being trained in hardcore sciences, and that's a great thing to do. And but we forget that people do not connect with data. People do not have an affinity for just stuff and things as much as we like. We get an emotional attachment maybe to a piece of art, but we don't, just random numbers or random figures and facts. We get connected to people, and we get connected to relationship. And if it's not part of the story, I'm not interested in it. And so what I'd like to do is have that emotional connection, like you're saying, because I truly know firsthand that narrative and story changes people. You love a book that you become connected to, that you become a part of, that you are invested in emotionally, and you only do that when it's a well-written story. And it really doesn't, what that story is written about is often less meaningful than being taken into it. And it can change you because of the way the characters react might be different than you, but your emotions are taken with that character in a way that you realize, this is how I can also face this, or this is the way that I also relate to other people like this, and I didn't even know it. And so I think that we need that in general in people's connecting to people who do science, so that they understand why people do the things that they do. Not just that they're out there curing cancer, because most scientists aren't out there to cure cancer, or they're not out there to save the last rhinoceros. They might be studying some obscure microbe, that ends up saving some other species totally by accident, right? But you won't have a connection to that microbe. You won't have a connection to why people do the science unless you have a connection to the person who's doing the science. And so that's what I'm kind of interested in, is that narrative. And it doesn't even have to be a real person. It can be a totally fictional person. But you get a connection. And why would I do this? Why could I see myself doing these things? Oh, I see it because I'm connected to this story, right? And we all have stories. We don't live our life without it. You can't live your life without story, because our memory is a story of what has happened to us. And it's so fallible that it usually isn't particularly correct, our memory, but it still sustains us and pushes us forward into the next things that we choose. And so I think that it's totally natural to use story to connect people to something that most of us have little to no connection to, and that would be a scientific process, because it is boring on one level if you don't have a reason to be excited about it. So right.
Well, we are out of time, so I think we'll say goodbye, and maybe next week we can discuss how the heck are you going to balance this with having the kids around all the time? I'm doing the same thing. As you could see, Nesta was in and out and in and out and in and out, getting Cheez-Its and yogurt and candy and other things. But that's part of the delightful process of it all too, is how we're kind of juggling all of that. So,
and this is we're talking to each other, but none of this, it's not like either of our minds are ever made up on any one thing. This is how, this is a narrative in and of itself. So if you're out there listening to this, our lives go up and down, they change. And the reason why we do things has a lot to do with our own narrative. So thank you for listening.
All right. All right. I'm JL Powers.
I'm MA Powers.
And this is Powerssquared Raw and Real, number 17. And we will see you next week.
Bye.